Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Nandi Malumbazo. I'm a senior lecturer at the School of Chemical and Metallurgical Engineering at WITS, as well as also teaching energy policy and regulation at the WITS Business School. And I'll be your facilitator of this session. So I would like to welcome you all on this plenary session with a theme on Africa's critical minerals, powering renewable energy and socio-economic growth. This plenary will focus on Africa's pivotal role in the global shift towards renewable energy and how it will leverage on its critical minerals. The just energy transition is deemed to be mineral intensive. So the continent holds 30% of the world's mineral reserves, and therefore there is a great chance that with the just energy transition and decarbonization goals, the continent will be able to advance its socio-economic growth through local content initiatives. This is the opportune time for the continent to zoom into finding strategies on how the mineral wealth can play a critical role in the manufacturing of solar panels, wind turbines, electric vehicles, and green hydrogen. However, most of these critical minerals or future minerals lie in the SADC countries, which in turn raises concerns about environmental and socio-economic impact of mining of these minerals. For this panel, I'll be having 3 panel members, which will discuss the challenges and how the critical minerals can support the just energy transition era whilst addressing and meeting socio-economic disruptions to meet the demands of the mineral-intensive journey towards the net zero economy. I would like to call upon my 3 panel members, which are Mr. Tifo from Minerals Council of South Africa, which is abbreviated MINCOSA, Prof. Bernard Bladehun, who is the head of Energy Storage Innovation Lab at the University of the Western Cape, and Dr. Thabo Hlalele, who is the Energy Central Head at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, which is abbreviated CSIR. Can we please give them a round of applause? Thank you. Mr. Christian Tifo will provide a presentation titled Critical Minerals, Challenges and Opportunities for South Africa. I would like to call upon you on the stage.
Thank you. How do I move it? Next and back, no? Yeah. Good morning, colleagues. As introduced, I'm Christian Tifo from the Minerals Council. Happy to be here. I think as producers of coal and so on, we've been taken as those ones that are actually polluting the environment, not supporting climate change and so on, but we are really not. Actually, our members have also moved on to a state where they see themselves actually as energy companies and also looking at renewable energy, doing research into those rare earth minerals that you can find in the dumps and so on. So as the Minerals Council, I must do that marketing. We represent about 90% of all minerals mined in the country. We are not a government organization. We represent business and business views. So I'm going to be giving a presentation on critical minerals, challenges, and opportunities for South Africa. That is my outlines, explaining what critical minerals are, the need to explore in South Africa, the policy environment, and concluding remarks. So what are critical minerals? These are minerals that governments and countries regard as essential for national security and defense. They are critical for energy, for carbon reduction, and they are also critical for our industries and development of new technologies. And when I talk about that, I'm sort of thinking of the current one, which is iron ore, where we've got ArcelorMittal currently experiencing challenges, and sustainability, which, if they were to close shop here, we would lose a lot of investment, and minerals that obviously go into our industries, be it for manufacturing or companies like Eskom and the mines that need iron. They are deemed to be essential based on the strategic assessment of supply risks and disruptions for national industries, and that's what I've just talked about. Single country sources of minerals are regarded as a high risk, and we do have those single sources in South Africa, things like manganese, things like platinum, and chrome. Minerals deemed critical can change at any time as technology develops, supply and demand fluctuates, and societies need change, as we're seeing with the just energy transition. Each country has its own list of what constitutes critical minerals, and I think we must take into consideration the fact that with our energy regulations or Energy Act, you've got strategic minerals that have been put into that. As the Minerals Council, we really do not support them being used as strategic. So basically, with regards to the Energy Act, you can say, let's say graphite is a strategic mineral, and therefore you can limit how much is being exported. But when you do that, do you have the means to beneficiate it for the benefit of the whole world? So we feel that market prices will be the way to go, instead of putting in laws to limit what you can do with them. Critical minerals in South Africa, we've got chromium sitting at 72%. We're mining it in the eastern limb and western limb of the Bushveld complex. We're currently struggling in terms of railing it out of the country. We do that through Richards Bay. Some of it is going to Mozambique, but we're really struggling to get it out of the country. So those are some of the limiting factors. We've got gold, 30% of the world reserves, but I must say the gold we're now sitting at depth, and it's very difficult to take it out with the current labor prices and electricity prices. Platinum group metals, we hold about 80% of the reserves. Nickel, if you know about Nkomati and Makadodorp, those are the reserves we have, and also as a byproduct from some of the mining. In terms of manganese, we've got 80%, mostly in the Northern Cape. We've got vanadium in Brads, Vametco, Bushveld Energy. They are actually trying batteries in terms of that, and we also have it in Limpopo. There's also rare earth elements, and we've seen, if you look at that writing at the bottom there, Steenkampskraal, we've got high quantities of rare elements there. And then we've got zinc, about 11%. We know about Vedanta, that's mining zinc. Critical minerals used in manufacturing, you can see it's used for either internal combustion engines or the electric vehicles. And mostly we use aluminum, followed by copper, and you also have have lithium in the mix. We also use it for power generations, for solar, the same 3 minerals, and you also have it on the wind. Also used for coal and gas, I mean, for combustion of those. A few countries would dominate this market of critical minerals, and I think people actually caught on, or countries caught on to this late. China has really invested in making sure that they put a hand in terms of the market of these critical minerals. I mean, if you look at those charts there, you can just see it's all red. And after China, you've got Australia, where Africa is leading is with DRC with the cobalt that actually passes through our country for export. We've also got copper, but it's not, I mean, you've got the PMC mine. There's another mine somewhere in Kopani. Last time I saw it, it was still under exploration. So that shows you how much is out there. We do have lithium. Zimbabwe has got, I think it's number 6 in terms of the reserves that they have with regards to lithium, and they've been growing. Global nature of critical minerals, so you can see what South Africa have there, and other countries. China also is there, and Australia with the coking coals. Africa is a source of critical minerals. Yes, we lead with cobalt in the DRC. We lead with the manganese in South Africa. And then Mozambique has some of the graphite, including Gabon, platinum, chromium, mostly South Africa, bauxite with Guinea. And the copper, you'll have it here in the country, you'll have it also with the DRC. That just shows you in terms of BRICS that we control 29% of the GDP in the world, but we house about 50% of the population. So it's very critical for us to grow as quick as we can to make sure that the GDP actually increases to a point where it relates positively with the population. Africa is not realizing its full potential because we're not doing as much exploration as we should be. I mean, if you look at South Africa, in terms of the whole world's investment into exploration, we used to get about 5.4%. It has moved down to about 0.8%, which is very low. I mean, we're basically doing the exploration just to keep into business, to maintain the current production, but we're not really finding a lot of those mines. I mean, in the past 15 years or so, we only had one gold mine that sprang up, and a lot of people don't know about it. It's with Pan-African Resources. We do have other mines that have been explored, constructed, and are currently working with other commodities, but it has dropped significantly. And by that drop, you see it also with the labor figures that we've moved to about 475,000, and we'll probably have to undergo retrenchments of another 20,000 or more people. The need for exploration in South Africa, I just spoke to it, is that 0.8%. And you actually need it to sit at 5%. And the rhythms of mining, this graph just shows you how you need the exploration, you need the construction, and the construction you do need the steel inputs, and you need things to be able to be sourced economically. You've got mining production, you've got marketing, you've got the transportation system and energy sitting in there, and also your rehabilitation, which is also a very big problem because we're not finding, we're not able to get closure certificates. Unlocking the exploration is a game changer. So we need to have a cadastral system to make sure that we can get our licenses as quickly as possible. We currently have a list of about 5,000 licenses that are outstanding. Now, you might think 5,000, it's small money, it's not. So as the Minerals Council, the DDG of licensing within the GMRE has requested that we update the list. And one of the companies that we requested them to share the information shared 2 projects, and each one of those projects involves a capex of about 100 million. Now, if you think 200 million just from one company with 2 licenses, how much is it going to generate? I'm sure it's way over $1 billion. So if you were to unlock those licenses or those applications that are sitting with the GMRE, we can actually get to the 5% of economic growth that we want to reduce the unemployment that we have in the country. A readily accessible and high-quality detailed geological survey. That one, I mean, is dependent on the Council of Geosciences. I think they are doing a great job. But it's also dependent on the people that are doing the exploration in terms of where do you take the information afterwards? Do you take it out of the country and keep it in a library somewhere where South Africans are not able to get a hold of it? So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we see in the country, and the CGS must obviously make sure that they're able to follow up on these explorations and make sure the information is kept in our libraries. We talked about the 5,000 applications. Again, you need a stable, predictable, investor-friendly regulatory environment to make sure that people will come into our country. Now, with us, we know with every regime change, there's something that gets tweaked. And I think questions are asked. Last time we were asked by Moody's to say, but why are people preferring, why is the US preferring to go and spend millions on a rail network in the DRC when the DRC is not as stable as South Africa? And it's mainly because of that. They know that if you put your money there, you're able to get your money back and actually get profits from that. So I think that is a big challenge within our country. And exploration will definitely find us those minerals. South Africa is very well endowed. In terms of the policy work, we have started talks with Mintech, the CSIR, the GMRE. We're currently working on a framework that we hope that by end of March would be with Cabinet for their consideration, and we're hoping that there will be a strategy already by the end of the year. To make sure that we've got a strategy that will support things like the South African Renewable Energy Master Plan, which talks about industrialization. This just shows what the Minerals Council has started. I'm very proud to say that because in terms of the NICOM one, not the NICOM really, it's starting, but we started the talks to say we need government and industry to work together for a common goal. We've even gone and invested about 500 million into the structures that you see there, NICOM, the NLCC, which is the logistics committee, and also the security one, because those are our main challenges, why we're not getting the minerals out there. So we think our thoughts are also that with this strategy, we will also assist to make sure that we come up with a strategy that works for everyone. And basically there I'm talking generally to the things that we've talked about. If you address the logistics concerns, you've sorted out the main problems. I mean, where you see our coal used to be, I think the highest was about 76 million tons to about 81 million tons. 2022, we could only rail about 50 million tons. Last year, we railed about 47 million tons. This year, you saw there was a crash there, and it's obviously going to go below that. You're seeing companies that normally don't retrench, like Kumba and or retrenching. The platinum guys are retrenching when their metal is in demand. So we need to make sure that we fix that rail network. The other thing is that you also have challenges with energy, where you're hearing company associations like FAPA saying you've got 50% of smelters sitting idle in the country. to a point where I think last year during the Solar Power Africa conference, I actually had a meeting with the Deputy Secretary or Deputy Minister of the US on energy, saying that they actually have money that they want to invest in Africa to an amount of about $2 billion US. They are prepared to fund some of the closed smelters here to make sure that all of these minerals that are passing through our countries can be beneficiated at the bottom and then put onto the sea to the countries that need them. So I think we've got a great country. There's a couple of things that we need to fix. We are working on them. The fact that we're sitting at an availability of 54% with our electricity and we're not seeing any positive build coming through. I mean, in terms of a government procurement for the past 5 years, you've only got 150 megawatts that came online, which is way less than what industry has brought through. You've got a very questionable IRP that has come out, the energy plan. So we think that we need to bolster that. For us, we've been positive. We're paying for a proper comment into the RP to make sure that it addresses the energy needs. As you know, in the minerals industry, we do use solar, we do use wind. It helps us a lot, but you do need dispatchable energy. Whether it's batteries, whether it's gas, whether it's nuclear, you do need that energy, and we will be commenting into that to make sure that whatever energy mix that we get is the least cost and is the one that will get the work done in the country. Thank you.
Can we give him a round of applause? And just in summary with his presentation, Mr. Tifo has actually covered up, showed us the opportunities that the African continent has when it comes to critical minerals. And if we can then come back to South Africa, he also showed us that the country has got less than 10 of these, whilst countries like China, they've got more than 50, the UK more than 30, and so on and so forth. So those are the opportunities for us to actually do more exploration when it comes to the future minerals. Others are calling them critical minerals, others are calling them green minerals, which are the minerals that will actually take us to the low carbon economy. The challenges that he actually mentioned are the ones that we all know: logistics, energy, as well as tackling crime and corruption in the mining sector. And also we need to actually define critical minerals with an understanding of the global market needs. So not taking too much of your time, what we are going to then be doing, we are going to have a panel discussion with my other two panel members, Prof. Bernard Bladegoen as well as Thabo Hlalele. And then after that, I will allow the audience 10 minutes for question and answers. If I may start with you, Mr. Christian Tifo. Yes, you have showed us the criticality or the cruciality of these minerals. And the market for energy transition minerals, which are critical minerals, in the past 2 years, it has reached $320 billion US and is set for continued rapid growth. Meaning that the importance of critical minerals is actually being envisioned globally, is actually being seen or observed globally. And we all know that these minerals are actually critical for your wind turbines, solar panels, as well as other technologies other than those that are needed for just energy transition. The question that I have for you then, has the African continent seen this growth when it comes to the economics or benefiting from the critical minerals? And if so, what are the economic scale that the critical minerals have played to boost the continent's economy? Or what are the envisioned economic scale that these minerals have?
Yeah. I think most of the countries that you're talking about, we primary resources countries, so we depend on what we mine or what we farm to make money. Manufacturing, it is there, but it's not that advanced, and also the service industry. So for our economies to change, we basically need to make sure that we mine, obviously sustainably, so that at a point we also get to a point where our countries are service-based. In terms of the DRC, we have seen the growth in terms of cobalt, in terms of copper, and in terms of the capital or money that they generate from that. You've seen that obviously the US, something similar to the IDC in the US in terms of their financing companies, has invested in the DRC, like I said. And by doing that, it means you are unlocking the country, you are creating work, you are reducing the unemployment into that country. The next leg is obviously an investment into the energy sector. And with every growth with regards to the energy that you put out there, you'll also see an economic growth. In terms of Zimbabwe, we've seen growth in terms of the lithium that they are taking out. People have talked about the fact that there is a cap in terms of what you can take out because of their rules and ownership within those companies, but you're still seeing investment going in there. So when you need something, you'll go in to go and buy it or invest in it so that you can get it. So we're seeing growth in terms of that. I think with regards to South Africa, there wouldn't be that much growth. And we know why we don't have growth. It's mainly because of the electricity not being available. Some people will say, do not load curtail the business, only load curtail residentials. But I think with the Constitution, you can't really do that. So we've got a lot of things that are actually impeding us from growing. But if you look at the COVID period, the country actually survived on what the minerals industry could give.
Okay.
So there is a potential to grow.
To grow.
Yeah.
And then let's touch base then on the issue that countries like Zimbabwe, I also know that also Namibia, as well as Indonesia, they have introduced they've introduced the banning of export of unbeneficiated minerals.
Yeah.
Yes. So do you actually see this as a wise economic decision taken by these countries, or will this actually stifle an economic growth for these countries? Because I believe then that, because in the past we know that in the African continent we are actually not doing beneficiation in our countries. We mine and then we actually, yes, we take all the minerals unbeneficiated to China and to other parts of the world. Yeah. But then if we are introducing then these new policies onto these green minerals or future minerals, don't you see that as a way of stifling the investors wouldn't want to actually invest in these particular countries?
Yeah, I think yes, it will stifle your investment. A simple way to look at it would be, coal is actually different because for people like at Lephalale, you've got 3 products, so you still need to sell some locally, whereas some is going international. But the price that you would get for coal in South Africa, if you take it at the peak 2 years ago, you were getting about 6,000 rand per ton of coal, whereas for the country, it was just about 1,000 rand, I think, for Eskom. So that shows you the amount of money that you will lose out if you start saying you cannot take the lithium out or you cannot take the chromium out because it's a strategic mineral within the country. What you also do with that is that because you do not have the facilities to do the beneficiation, then what happens to the ore? So generally, it will just sit in the country and not do anything. So as the Minerals Council, we do not believe in having those those quotas in terms of how much you can export and how much should be beneficiated. We believe in the fact that you must enable the infrastructure. So if you make sure that your electricity is least cost, that people do have electricity, businesses will come back here. There's companies from South Africa that have moved to Indonesia and other countries. They are taking ore out to go and smelt it there. We need those companies back, even if it's not those companies, but we need other companies to come into our country, and that is only held up by the fact that we do not have electricity. So electricity has got a high importance in terms of this. You need the logistics, and you also need security, because we have situations where we've seen thieves going underground at an operating mine, taking cables that are working, and once they get accosted by the mine security, you find that you're dealing with 100 people with AKs. You normally don't see it on TV. We do see it. So it's a very serious challenge. So we've got those challenges in the country, and I think sort those ones out, and we will see the economic benefits.
Okay. Thank you for that. We have mentioned that when it comes to critical minerals, or when it comes to renewable energy, the most critical thing is your battery storage, or it's your storage capacity. And we believe some of these future minerals, they will actually be able to assist in battery storage. So I will actually go to Dr. Hlalele from the CSIR. Can you tell us more about the trends that have been happening in that space of battery storage when it comes to decarbonization? Can you just give us an opening statement on that?
Can you hear me? Great stuff. Yeah, thanks for that question. So if you look at the global trends, you would know that over the last few years, there's been a very clear intention globally to decarbonize the entire economy, right? And to that end, we've also seen what it means from a South African point of view, where the recent carbon border mechanism, adjustment mechanism was implemented by Europe, which essentially affects what we do here locally. Now, coupled to that, we've also seen a significant drive around what we call this, the IRP, the first draft of the IRP that was published back in 2019, which showed the typical energy mix that is required within the country, and obviously we've got the recent IRP. Over and above that, we've also seen the NDB 2030 that had made very ambitious intentions in terms of retiring certain fossil fuel assets in support of the renewable energy resources. Massive numbers, around 15 gigawatts of renewable energy resources that needs to be added to the grid. To date, where we are sitting as a country from the first bid window project to where we are, we have an installed capacity of roughly 6.3 gigawatts, most of wind and solar, right, as well as CSP. I think CSP has remained constant around 500 megawatts all throughout. Now, that is a positive drive on the one hand, because it already shows that there has been movement in the right direction. But what we are also seeing is a drive in the CNI space, or private PPA, where we have had a large business-to-business agreement, bilateral agreements of procuring renewable energy resources. And one of the reasons, after the recent bid window 6, we saw a drive from your typical RIP program to business, where that has also been a significant increase. Over and above that, we've also seen a significant drive in the embedded generation space. Now, all these things are showing the clear indication and direction that South Africans has taken around decarbonizing its sector. So on the PV side, we are seeing that the current RIP program has realized some of its potential in terms of local content requirements, where there's been massive support in terms of your cables that needs to be procured locally, your transformers that needs to be procured locally, depending on the size and all that. So we've seen an improvement in that space. When it comes to the wind turbines, we've also seen that there's been local manufacturing supporting some of the critical minerals that we have locally here, right? When it comes to batteries, on the other hand, we are seeing a situation where we have... Can you hear me? I don't know. Yeah. So we're seeing that the recent bid window that came through last year with a couple of preferred bidders, there's definitely a right direction in that step, although it's more around the importing of existing battery systems. We would like to see more local beneficiation, right? Would like to see that sector being stimulated. Would like to see value addition in terms of the processing aspect. And this is one of the reasons why we also have the RDI plan from the DSI that seeks to combine a number of different institutions to sort of support that number one, prime economy that ultimately leads to the secondary economy that has to do with the manufacturing and beneficiation of that. So that's the trends that we are seeing in the market, and I think it's a step in the right direction.
Okay, so you are really seeing a positive change towards decarbonization in essence.
Indeed.
Yes. Then, my next question is, with that positivity that we are actually seeing in the country, what are the research areas that the CSIR has embarked on when it comes to the advancement of battery storage? Can you share us your research areas or your focus areas on such?
Well, we can do that. I did mention that through the DSI and the research development innovation program that the DSI sponsored, we are part of a consortium that hosts the CSIR, University of Limpopo, UWC, and a number of other research institutions in the country. And what that RDI seeks to achieve is to leverage of the strengths from different institutions. From the CSIR point of view, we have significant experience in the battery material, the cathode and anode material that we have been doing for a number of years, and a number of patents that we sort of have under our belt, particularly with the lithium, NMC, and on the anode side, we have now looking at the graphite, right? So these are some of the things that we are working together with other institutions to support this battery ecosystem locally that will ultimately unlock EVs as well as stationary applications in the future. So we are looking forward to showcasing those battery technologies that we are developing in consortium with other partners.
Okay, which is, I think that's a great thing, because as Difo has mentioned in his presentation, that when it comes to then the geographical composition of graphite, I think it's more or less around Mozambique, and we have, I think, pockets of it in the country. So I think that's a good initiative when it comes to then the CSIR. And going to then Professor Bladehon, since you are part and parcel of the consortium, the DSI consortium that Dr. Hlalele has mentioned, can you actually briefly share with us your achievements and successes thus far on this program from a technical point of view?
Yes, thank you for the question. So University of Western Cape is part of the consortium, and we focus on cell assembly. So whereas there are a couple of companies in South Africa that make battery packs, there's currently actually none that makes cells. So the cell is really the mostly produced in Asia, but we are the only facility on the African continent that actually makes cells. And those cells are actually performing very well. We benchmark our cells against Samsung, and we find that our cells are just the same or even better. So the quality of the cell is really good. We got the right technology. It's just the cost that is far exceeding the cost of the cells that are made on the gigawatt scale in the factories in the world. But of course, the focus of the program was not to make commercial viable cells, it's to learn how to make cells. Okay. So we also have exchange projects with the Argonne National Lab. We send our students to Argonne. They are exposed to the latest technology in battery cell making, and they're coming back with that latest technology. So we're really on the forefront when it comes to battery cell assembly. Now, where it becomes tricky is how to transfer that knowledge from making cells to a commercial facility, because that's what we eventually want. And one thing is scale. So in order to make a cell economically compatible, you need to do these processes on a very, very large scale. That's why when anybody wants to start a lithium-ion battery facility, they always talk about giga this, giga that, giga scale. And for that to happen, you need a couple of $billions. So that is a major investment that needs to be done. And then the risk is there that those cells must outperform or at least be equal to the cells of the world, the BYDs, the Teslas, the Panasonic and Sonys and whatever. So that's really a challenge. Now, what makes that challenge even more challenging is that all the raw material, we may have a lot of raw materials, but we don't have battery grade materials. So, and it looks like miners in general, they are not too much interested to make battery grade materials. They just want to sell partially refined ores. If not ores, then it's partially refined materials. So, and maybe there's this one slide that you can put on the screen to talk about that. But so we also move in terms of the facility at UWC. We moved away from cell assembly to pack assembly and application of those packs. So we have packs that power bicycles and these type of things. So the slide behind me, I think this is really important to actually share this with the audience and give a sense of what's actually happening with the wealth in South Africa in terms of ores. And this particular slide shows you on the left-hand side is the value of the ore that South Africa is selling, and I'm specifically referring to manganese in this case. So the value of the ore per kilowatt hour of that ore is around about 2. And I mean, I don't want to be cited on the numbers, but the message is quite clear. If you turn that ore into an NMC precursor, then you more than double that value. And if you take that precursor and you make an NMC cathode, so the actual material that goes into the battery, and that number again gets multiplied. And very quickly you move from an ore that is only worth $2 per kilowatt hour, you massively increasing that value. But this is, the value addition is happening in the rest of the world. So, and obviously there will be a major resistance from companies that want to buy your ore, because they want to add value. They have a mandate from their country that says you must try to get the least refined material, because then we can add the value. So obviously there will be resistance if countries say we don't want to sell unrefined ore, and that may initially stifle the sales. But I think the longer term view is that you can extract way more value if you persist and really try to come and negotiate with these people that actually need your ore. It almost seems that in South Africa, and I say we in South Africa, I'm originally Dutch, but I'm here a little bit more in South Africa than I was in the Netherlands, so I'm actually more South African than Dutch. So if I say we should make sure that we negotiate in a way, I mean, the foreigners, they come to South Africa, they want the minerals. It's not that that we want the money. You need to think of that they need the minerals. The minerals, all these minerals that are needed in the transition of a just energy transition, the people come to the countries with the minerals. They have the power in that sense. So you need to use that power. You need to say, you can only get my minerals if you build a factory here that refines it. And I see that as the easiest way, because, and if you are united, if Africa gets united, then there's no more way for these the foreigners to come and to say, okay, if you don't want to sell it, I just go to your neighbor. You need to be united, and you need to get a plan. You need to get refining done, and then you don't get this picture where you're just selling your ore for peanuts and you have to buy the battery packs at way more expensive back. So a part of the value chain, as you can see in this picture, is actually solved. There's quite a number of companies that are halfway the value chain. They're buying cells, they make packs, and they actually selling that within the African continent. And then, of course, you're capturing more of the value.
So you are actually in support of these other countries that have measures to actually ban the export of unbeneficiated ores?
If it's well orchestrated or well planned, then this can really make sense. So I think if it's unplanned, then you need to be united. But I fully support the idea that foreigners that need the minerals, they need to go and negotiate, and concessions have to be made. That some of these minerals are actually made in the country, or value is added. And it's not just about refining. I think the mineral beneficiation goes much further than just one step in the ore refining. So if a platinum mine sells pure platinum, then of course they're already adding value, because they're making the ore, they're transforming the ore into pure platinum. But why not make fuel cell grade platinum catalysts? Because that's where the value is, again, way more added. So there's a lot of extra value that can be coming into the country when you keep that mineral as long as possible within the value chain.
Okay. Thank you for that. And going back to Dr. Hlalele, with these technologies, in addition to what Professor Blareggon has elaborated on, what are the other minerals that are needed for these technologies, and how are they easily accessible geographically? I know DIFO has also touched based on the geographic accessibility of such across the African continent, but specifically other than lithium ore, what are other minerals that are actually needed or are envisioned to be needed in future when it comes to the battery storage?
Yeah. So if you look at the different battery chemistries, you would obviously come to cobalt, right? You would come to, you've already mentioned lithium, you've already mentioned manganese. What is very clear when you start looking at these different minerals is South Africa on its own cannot do it by itself. And I think some of you might have been listening to SONA yesterday, where the president noted that South Africa and DRC has come into some sort of an agreement for mineral exchange. particularly when it comes to cobalt and other critical minerals, right? Now, obviously, that will take a bit of time. In South Africa, we also have vanadium as one of the critical minerals that we have.
Yes.
You also need the likes of copper, right, which we also have, but we need Zambia also is one of the countries that has copper that we can get copper from. Aluminium, also very critical component from the electrode side. So there's a number of these minerals, but South Africa needs to take a position of regional trade to ensure that it builds a solid foundation when it comes to not just mining that, but coming up with a clear value chain that is well supported in the upstream for mineral processing, so that ultimately we do not lose on this opportunity that Prof. Ben has already highlighted. For example, this example of manganese is a typical example of when we develop those skills internally to process these minerals, then we'll be able to gain more, both in terms of the jobs that would be created across the entire value chain, as well as the skills required to drive these gigafactories that we need in the country. So there's a number of these critical minerals, but I'm sure, as Devo has already highlighted, that we are also expecting the critical mineral strategy that they will be publishing, and I think that will also elaborate more in terms of what is strategic for the country and how do we support the auto sector in terms of the EV component of it, and as well as the stationary application. And those are just some of the key critical minerals that I just want to highlight.
And I also think with what we are actually seeing, since also China, remember China is not mining these minerals, but China are the actual leaders when it comes to supply of these minerals, just because they were very successful when it comes to then the beneficiation component, because that's what they are good at. It's the processing other than then the mining of these minerals. And lastly, before I open the floor for questions, therefore you actually, during your presentation, you actually touched based on strategic minerals as well as critical minerals. Can you kindly define that for us? Is that the same thing, or is there a difference between strategic minerals and critical minerals?
So, a strategic mineral in terms of the Energy Act is any mineral that can be used for the production of energy, and if the government deems it fit, it can put quotas on it. Okay. So in terms of this one, it would still address if we had lithium and they didn't want it going out of the country, it could address that. It could address currently manganese, even coal. But it has not been implemented.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but we don't have a framework for the critical minerals and a strategy for that. And I think once that comes through, you don't really need to change the Energy Act, because it might still be addressed there.
Okay.
So it would cover the critical minerals.
Okay. So strategic minerals then, they are sort of the base of the country's economy,
yes.
Whereas then critical minerals are the minerals that are needed for the future, but then also they are deemed to be important due to supply and demand risks. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that definition. And then I would like to then open the floor for questions. Okay, here is the mic behind you.
Good morning. I'm Michael from the Atlanta Special Economic Zone. On the panel, we seem to have strong technical ability with the CSIRO, Mineral Council South Africa, and the University of Western Cape. So my question is, with the technical ability and knowledge that we have, the strong mining companies like Sibanye, African Rainbow Minerals, and Impala, and some of the strong financial institutions in Africa, such as the IDC, Development Bank, the PIC, capital markets, is there no opportunity for South African firms through PPAs to actually drive innovation in manufacturing, as opposed to like other African markets where we're waiting for America or the EU to come give us money on their terms?
Is your question directed to any of the panel?
Oh, it's a general question, sorry.
Okay.
I think I can start with that one. In terms of vanadium, you've got Bushveld Energy that's looking at using the vanadium in a battery. They've already tested that with Eskom, and I think their battery, if not producing already, it's very close to doing that. On top of that, they were also looking at having a factory somewhere in the Eastern Cape, not on their balance sheet, but some innovators on the side to produce those batteries and then be able to ship them out, whether to Europe, Asia, or anywhere. So we do have that capacity within the country. Maybe someone wants to add.
I think Ben wanted to also add on to...
Thank you for your question. So maybe we could separate the two in cell manufacturing and anything that you can do with cells. So in terms of making, if your cell is perfect, you can apply that cell in enormous amount of applications. EV vehicles will be one, but there's many others. So I think the technical abilities and the opportunities in the country are definitely favoring that side of the opportunity. Meaning, we get cells, and you build a South African industry or an African industry to produce EVs and scooters and whatever that could utilize those cells. Now, with the cell manufacturing, it's a slightly different story. We are behind the curve in terms of the abilities. I mean, there's literally thousands of PhDs graduating from university in China, all specifically dealing with batteries. So the knowledge on the edge of batteries, we don't have that. And then it becomes very risky to invest several billions of dollars onto in a cell that you may not be able to compete with the state of the art in the world. So the more logical choice would be to invite the best in the world technology, but build your local economy around that. So specifically the mineral beneficiation, why don't we have electrolyte manufacturing? Why don't we have manganese manufacturing? Those things actually can happen. We have the skills, we have the resources to do that. So start with the value chain on the ground, and that will then motivate the big players to come up and set up a factory which makes economically viable and compatible cells of the quality that we need to drive the energy transition.
Okay. Is there any other question on the floor? One more question? Because we're running out of time.
Good morning. My name is Derek Buerta. I'm from a company called Game Change Solar. We do solar tracking systems. I'd just like to ask the panel a question is, what is stopping South African companies from doing it? Or is there a possibility that there needs to be a framework around this? Because, for example, in our situation, we do steel. I know steel isn't the discussion point here, but there is disruption in the steel market. And the problem is you don't have demand in South Africa because there's no export. So is there a framework that needs to be set up? Similarly, as has been done, for example, in the United States, where they encourage the semiconductor industry to now do wafers, semiconductor wafers in the United States. So is there a framework? Is the government supposed to play a role here, or a different role, or create an environment for this further development? And it's for the whole panel.
Okay. Any takers?
Yeah. Try it, and maybe also linking it with the question that you highlighted as a start. On the one hand, yes, you need to incentivize local manufacturing so that you can offset and even put a higher tariff on imported steel so that you can promote local manufacturing, right? On the other hand, we also know that in the challenge that you sort of brought forward, you are sitting with South African economy that is largely primary and tertiary, so basically extractive as you services. Manufacturing, very much constrained by skill set. In a country such as South Africa, where we don't have enough skills, that becomes a challenge, especially once you want to go if you're gonna be producing trackers for the PV modules, then you actually also want scale so that the economies of scale can get you advantage. Then it becomes a bit of a challenge because then everything has to be automated. And in a country where we are currently facing certain challenges in terms of security of supply, your cost of electricity also affects what you can do. So there's a lot of intervention that we can sort of start working towards. Number one, let's train as many people as possible of that, but it's not sufficient. Number two, let's continue prices. We've seen a significant drop in terms of renewable energy prices that ultimately affects the final price. So, and finally, let us impose certain tariffs for importing some of these steel so that we can promote local manufacturing so that it can protect the local jobs.
Okay. Thank you, my panel members, for such questions. We're running out of time, so I actually wanted to give you each at least few minutes as a closing statement, to give us a closing statement so that we can close off this discussion.
Okay.
Ben, do you want to?
I can start.
Okay.
I think for us, it's mainly about the government coming to the party to assist, to enable business with policies that will drive us to grow for the betterment of the country. And I think with everything that we've been implementing for the past 5 years or so, if you look at business, you can see that we're looking at not only making the profit, but we're also looking at South Africa as our home and ensuring that it's also successful. So for us, we need business to come to the party, do policies that will enable us to ensure that we can grow bigger and bigger.
Thank you.
I would say that we are moving in the right direction, although the pace is relatively slow in terms of investing in local skills, investing in beneficiation and creating the necessary technologies that would support that. If we can get more investment in that would definitely help to speed up the process, because we are in a global environment, and if you're not competitive, then you will cease to exist.
Thank you for that. And Ben, lastly?
Yeah, I think the importance really to focus on battery grade refineries or battery grade materials. So, and why I say that is the standards and the purity requirements for a lot of the minerals that we need for batteries, it's known. So if you can make your nickel sulfate or your manganese sulfate to a specific quality, then you know you are battery grade quality. And that the market is big enough to focus on that as an offset. So focus on the localization of those battery grade materials, and that makes it so much easier for the large companies to set up a gigafactory. And then from there you get all the benefits from electrification and yeah.
Okay, thank you. As a wrap up, my panel members, they have highlighted critical issues when it comes to then the manufacturing part, as well as the local content, as well as skills development, when it comes to then looking forward to then also the decarbonization and the mining of these critical minerals. But we cannot have such if we don't have a good policy framework for such that will actually support investment towards those three highlighted areas. And with that have been said, I would like you to give a round of applause to my panel members as I'm closing off this session. Thank you for listening.